Ah, greetings, brother.
Hello.
Greetings, people of the internet and the future, perhaps. This is Gemini Brett here for our weekly Wednesday StarryTelling hour. And I'm so happy to be here with my dear brother, David Hoover from Lyra, the man
Indeed.
of the harp. How are you, sir?
I am doing quite well. Yeah, I feel very fully recharged from my recent travels.
Mm.
And then also this beautiful day today. The sun is shining finally out here in Oregon. And so yeah, it's a beautiful day.
I love it. I love seeing you. I love aligning our stars in constellations once again. This is something I plan to do more regularly here at StarryTelling Hour, sharing my amazing friends, especially folks like David, who I haven't gotten to see on Earth for far too long, but it's so nice to connect with you and heart and song. And so we're going to do a few things together today. I'm going to hear a bit about this trip that David has returned recently from, and about a trip that I hope we are all on, whether we know it or not. But I wanted to speak a little bit more acutely or presently and globally about the truth that we are just in this really strong eclipse window. And there's been some rather eclipsy things that I've been noticing in community in particularly, and hence the title that I threw up here in haste, but also with presence, which is out of the shadows. So I feel like sometimes I don't address this enough when the eclipse dragon comes by. Um, but it's a time of great change. And sometimes that happens very gradually, gracefully, and sometimes it happens rather suddenly. And I've seen some of that throughout the years, and I'm seeing some of that recently. So I wanted to just, well, ask you, David, if maybe you could play a song for, you know what, the way that I want to ask this is actually play a song for the dead and the dying. Um, I guess one of the reasons why I'm so inspired to ask it this way is this was actually David's gig for years, yeah? And when you lived in New Mexico?
Yeah, 15 years. I played at the bedside for patients and for hospice patients in particular. And so, I mean, wow. um, what can I say about that? To sit at someone's bedside um, and help them transition into another mode of being, I would say, because so many of our rituals in the culture that I was brought up in have kind of disappeared or lost their importance, and so this was a really powerful way to have that to punctuate that moment of passing with music and this type of ritual that music being this universal language. So sometimes I'd be playing for people that we didn't even share a language yet. It was able to offer that ritual to help them pass through. And yeah, so
I want to just read a couple comments that came in, which was what a very sacred gift to be present for birth and for death. Oh my, that is so beautiful. What an amazing way to share. And this one from Terrarian Librarian that's up on our screen. First of all, her name is the most amazing. But wow, what a beautiful, meaningful service to humans and to humanity. And I think that's such a great remember, because we do live in this void, this kind of disconnect from the roots of our ancestry, if you will. And, you know, how can we remember these ways of birthing and dying in grace and in ritual and in ceremony? And I love this also, like, what a beautiful, meaningful service to humans, but also to humanity. Because I'm hoping, David, we can just ask you to play a song for the transition of humanity now. And, you know, this is important every day, but perhaps at these special times of the year during these eclipse portals, and we're in a very strong one. So I'm just going to mute myself and put my camera away, and please feel free to play as long as it takes, brother.
Okay.
love hearing the sound of the water come and hold us as these last notes resound.
I don't know if you heard the crow also chiming in.
Those amazing ones who can take us across the gates into the next place. And I got music just does so much more than words could possibly approach. But I love how you brought us into new life, a new beginning, a birth. Yeah, I want to just hold my heart and offer, because I know this is really kind of present in the astrological community now, that there was a particular astrologer who saw this recent eclipse as like the symbol for the end times, and that it was time to choose a path. And sadly, she seemed to choose a path for her children and her boyfriend as well. And I kind of even don't want to stay into the space, the things that happened, but they were so horrendous. And I want to just offer this to fellows of the starry study right now, that in the first place, it can be an isolating thing to be into such a weird trip, such as astrology, or some of the things that David and I will play with today also. And I know how kind of isolating the awarening process can be for each of us mystics. And I do know personally that, or I've witnessed that it seems like the hermetic stage of the awakening is a kind of universal thing, that everyone goes into this time of isolationism. I think it's very important, however, also for us to find fellowship, and that's just as important of the phase. I mean, it's important, I think, for us to be, trapped in the magician's tower with our weird books for some time in our experiments, but then also to find folks on earth who share a love for the strange. And I just want to kind of first speak into, I know that for those who feel outcast or are literally kind of attacked by family or old friends about having this love for astrology, many of you have been told that you are now invested in the devil's work and these kinds of things. Like, those voices will be louder this week than at other times, given recent events. And I just want to offer big heart and love for fellows in the community who feel that attack, for something that they've just been called to. And I think that you being authentic to who you are and to your call is what's most important. And I just celebrate your courage, because I know it can be a courageous path to choose or not choose, but follow what you've been shown is your way into weird space. And so I love this man, David Hoover. He is one of many friends that I have found who is also into the strange, which, I mean, it's weird to even say that, because I just feel like you and I are called to explore nature and truth. And, if we lived hundreds and especially 1,000 years ago, this would just be the way. But things have kind of gotten, I don't know, out of whack as far as I'm concerned. And bards like yourself, David, moving around the earth with the beautiful lyre, I think can bring us back. So thank you for doing that. And I don't know, we were going to go to a few places today. I think if you're willing, we can speak about a very kind of acute eclipse story and your recovery from that story, which is one of yours, and then maybe catch up to this time now and see how this recent eclipse is participating with you and for you.
Yeah. Okay. I briefly wanted to mention, this place where I'm sitting here and I live. I've been here, I think now 7 years, and that I arrived here on your invitation, and we spoke about Orpheus, or actually Apollo, and the creation of the lyre. So and just kind of in timeline, that's how we kind of first came into contact with each other. And then so we've been weaving in and out of connection with each other, and each time it's very potent, very much like an eclipse, right? They separate and come back together, and then create these potent times and portals in our lives. So one of those meetings, let's see, this was 2016,
2016. I'm going to interrupt you because I'm
yes.
just amazed to be reminded, I guess, that I first invited you to that amazing place, which by the way is Wonderland in Portland, and it's going through a rebirth since I was last there. And that's kind of been its way since the beginning, and I think quite intentionally and also not so. But was it the Imagine Festival where you and I first met?
we first ran into each other at the Imagine Festival up on Orcas Island, and I was carrying my harp to go play, and we just crossed paths, and I walked up on you and you were talking about Lyra in the sky and Vega, and you were explaining it to somebody, pointing to the stars of the harp in the heavens. And I'm like, oh, I happen to be holding one right now. And so, that was kind of like the first star crossing. And
well, did you just start playing as I was speaking? Is it Trickster Should, or did I at least invite you to?
I don't quite remember.
Well, okay, so when we tell the story next time, it's but yeah, this is just how it rolls. Stars align, and yes, Orcas Island is such an amazing place, and the Imagine Festival is such an amazing festival. Make sure you get there. It happens in September if you can, friends. And it's a place where you can make friends. My favorite photo of me playing saxophone, by the way, is from that festival, where it's a photo of me through your heartstrings.
Indeed.
Yeah, we've had some great connections then. And yeah, I mean, obviously a place like Wonderland is the right place for an amazing walking heart like yourself. So I'm so glad that I was able to make that introduction, and that you're there, residing there now, where Heaven's Tea is. I'm drinking some tea that comes from great tea master Poe, who is probably sitting very close to where David is right now. I can envision that
right now. Yes.
Please give Poe my love.
Will do.
But yeah, so I had invited David, who I heard that you were on Hawaii and on the Big Island when I was coming out there to experience a solar eclipse. It was a total solar eclipse, although not seen in totality from Hawaii. Just like we had a total solar eclipse recently, and I saw it in partiality from here because I was very invested with my beloved Scorpiona to kind of clear out and prepare the birthing space for our child who's coming soon. And on Hawaii, that eclipse, which I think was seen in totality, like over kind of Indonesia way, maybe Philippines. I actually have an image of it here. Yeah, like Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, it looks like. On Hawaii, it was seen as like a partial solar eclipse. And many will have heard some stories that I've shared about that particular moment before, because one of my favorite experiences as a human being is while I was with a small group watching that eclipse on the beach at Kealakekua Bay, where many go to swim with dolphins, and I've been initiated into that amazing grace. I walked to give an offering at a sacred space nearby, one of the many powerful heiau spaces in Hawaii, and as I did, there was this young kid, and he's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing over there?" And I was like, "Hey, check this out." And I gave him my eclipse glasses. I was like, "Look at the sun." He's like, "What is that?" I was like, "That's the moon." Like the moon's eclipsing the sun. And he just ran off with my eclipse glasses to show his sister, and he caught himself. Like, he's like, "That's rude." And he came back, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, it's okay. Like, take him." He's like, "Go. Yeah, I have to show my sister." He's like, "I have to show everyone." And I was like, "I know exactly how you feel, bud." I've had some very like strange and like much later as cycles go repercussions in my world from that particular eclipse ceremony. which I will not share, but I appreciate your courage in sharing what went down for you, because I invited Dave to come play harp on the beach with us that day, and he didn't make it because was it the day before or 2 days before?
It was that day.
Was it really? So it was a Tuesday.
It was that day. Yes.
Okay, so actually, before you go there, is it okay if I share your chart?
Sure.
Okay, for folks who are watching on Instagram, it will probably look too small to see, so I'll try to narrate for you a little bit, or head over to like the YouTube page if you wish, which is, you can link to it from my bio, where you can see these things a little bit larger. But let me find the button. And I feel like Dave and I were talking about, well, what might it mean to have a total solar eclipse with Chiron, right? So this is pretty interesting. This is, I believe, the last time we had a total solar eclipse so close to Chiron. The one that we just had, of course, last week, or on April 8th, 2024, was like exact Chiron to the arc minute, which is just wild. But I was remembering at that time this eclipse in 2016. This is March 8th, 2016. Chiron back then was in Pisces, and this was a South Node Pisces total solar eclipse. It was like, it's like you can see, hopefully this, let me just show the eclipse chart. This whole T square here of the Pisces solar eclipse conjoined Chiron opposite Jupiter, with Saturn and Sagittarius like near their midpoint, right? So this just very large T square thing. And so instantly we look at this and it's like, okay, it's on. I'm interested always like music and tension and release. And there's something in the Jupiter Pluto trine that probably offers a little bit of release from the tension of the T square. I would say the same thing, by the way, in the Saturn Uranus trine. In Hawaii, I cast this for Kealakekua Bay, where I was for this eclipse. Leo was on the rise, and the eclipse was in the 8th. But when you look at this as a transit chart to the nativity of Dave Hoover here, in the 9th of kind of foreign lands and journeys, but so closely configured to Mars. And on a Tuesday, Mars's day, David had one of the most, I don't know, Martian events that I've heard tale of. So I guess share as much as that as you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. Well, I wrote, actually, I'll start with a verse of the song that I wrote about it, which was, it was a choppy day at sea, no place I'd rather be. A pod of dolphins was on hand. That's when I met my biggest fan. And so the story goes, I was out on a boat to swim with the dolphins, and we're pretty far out in the ocean, about 45 minutes offshore. And there was a pod of dolphins there, and we got in the water, and I have my snorkel mask on, and I'm kind of getting it ready and turning my GoPro camera on so I can maybe capture some of this magic. And I sense something like behind me, and I'm like, what is this? And so I turn around, and now I'm like floating on my back like an otter. And I'm like, whoa, it's the boat. And it's coming at me. And so then the next thing I know, my swim fin that I had on gets caught in the propeller, and I'm twisted up in it. And, I have the thought of like, that couldn't have been good. And it's funny what your mind thinks when these things happen. It's kind of goes in slow motion, and so then I pop up on the other side of the boat, and I'm just doing my best to swim over to the boat, and I'm, you know, shouting out, help, help, help. And, you know, I don't want to get so into the gory details of it, but it was very, very serious, life-threatening injuries that I sustained from that. And so at that point, I knew I needed to get very calm and centered. And, you know, I kept thinking, okay, it's Jedi time, and everyone else is going to take care of you. Your job is to remain calm and breathe. And this is a long journey, and you've just begun. So just relax into it. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be okay. Like, this is a marathon. So just relax. And so, yeah, 6 surgeries and a year later, I was still had a leg and bone grafts and metal plates and yeah, but thankfully today I can say with a lot of help from friends and family and highly skilled surgeons that I can walk and you know, for the most part only have pain when I exceed my limitations.
Yeah, I remember a few things. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One, it helped me kind of respect the potential acute, you know, disaster in rebirthing gateways and portals that eclipses can offer. And, you know, I really try, like when I'm in session with people and when I'm in counsel with myself astrologically, not to fall into fear, not to fall into like warning based astrology. Every now and then, though, and because I've witnessed experiences like this with acute astrological alignments, there will be that, hey, you know, I want you to just be aware of this. And I don't want this to be something where now you're looking over your shoulder and kind of just manifesting disaster. But this thing's strong. And, you know, you might want to like take it super easy and don't kick like, you know, propellers. The other thing was, and that lyric is hilarious. I haven't heard that song before of you meeting your biggest fan. How sweet. And by the way, I just wanted to share this with you as you were sharing. I went and I cast. I gotta find out actually how to put this on the screen. Hold on, I think there's a buttons. Right. So anyway, I cast the chart for the eclipse, and I cast it for Hawaii. I cast it for Kailua Kona. Still getting familiar here. Buttons. Okay. Check out how at the time of the eclipse, the dolphin constellation was setting in the west.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there's something about, and so as with the southern fish, and kind of like a pretty wet zone of the constellational expression. There's something. Can you say those lyrics again?
It was a choppy day at sea. No place I'd rather be. A pod of dolphins was on hand. That's when I met my biggest fan.
I didn't catch the choppy day at sea the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just that idea of the pod of dolphins being on hand. I loved as well that, you know, you said this was like, okay, this is Jedi time. Like, how amazing that this film that so many of us love, like Dave and I are both born in 1975, and so Star Wars would have been a huge part of our youth. Definitely was for me. that we had at least that example of Yoda, of
Yeah.
what it is to be meditative and Zen, and
Yeah.
things that like I hadn't heard about until later in life, and I really appreciate. And that's part of that, like Pisces eclipse, and at your Pisces Mars, right? Who I kind of want to get back into, because he's one of the beings in your chart that speaks for vocation and how you should make a loving, and how you can give your gifts to the world, as I know you do. But there's something about, especially Pisces Mars, like learning not, you can't fight for peace, right? Like that's irony. And there's something about learning to put our energy into timelessness and chilling, and that was kind of in that eclipse signature. So I also remember learning by witnessing you, and with you kind of actively communicating with me. We're looking at the charts a lot then.
Yes.
When you moved from in the bed to the wheelchair, to
Yes.
the walkers, to the
Yeah.
cane, to the just the boot, to
Yeah.
the Dave, who is like walking about, to the playing harp during the huge Eclipse Festival stage for the so-called Great American Eclipse in 2017, a
Yes.
year and a half later. And yeah,
Right.
and remembering also, hopefully it's okay for me to mention this, that the passing of your mother was
Yeah.
also in this time. And it's like all of these eclipses during that time are aligning to your chart in these profound ways. But it
Yeah.
really kind of helped me, I can't say understand, that would be a stretch, but honor and glimpse into the weird timeless timing of eclipse dragons, right? And like how long we can
Yeah.
smell their breath and this kind of thing. And it was really, it has been one of my personal, close to me, kind of deepest opportunities to study very strange things in astrology, by witnessing real life of an amazing dude who also, like, speaking of Mars, like I will always remember your just courage and warrior way of like doing what you had to do to get your legs back. Yeah. Have you been snorkeling since?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Totally.
Back
I
on the
mean, that's
horse.
the interesting thing. I don't have any fear or like PTSD about the ocean, or like I don't have, because a lot of times, I'll tell this story and people will bring that up and be like, "Oh, wow, you should stay away from the ocean." No, not a chance. Like, yes, I have a respect. It wasn't like the dolphins or Poseidon that came up and bit me. It was a prop. you know so I think that uh and a little bit more about like what you're saying there, the like the stretching of time, or like the timelessness of eclipses, and um it's there's a lot of power within near death experiences to come, as my surgeon, one of my surgeons said, I was showing her my arm, and because there were big gashes on my arm, and this leg was severely cut also. This one is a compound fracture. And I was showing her this, and I was like, wow, look at another inch and I wouldn't be able to play the harp, because it was these gashes across this arm, and she looked over at me and just with this look, and was like, millimeters and you would be dead. Like, that's how close it got to arteries. And so having that, and knowing that, like, on the boat, of like that whole thing about Jedi time, my body knew. It was like, hey, you need to focus right now. Your job is survive. And so, there's a lot that gets wiped off the slate when that happens. um, minor concerns or things you might thought have been important become suddenly not even part of your reality. And so, you know, there's this acute focus on like that survival instinct comes in. And so there's an incredible like cleansing force to having a near death experience. Um, so I think that was one of the gifts that, you know, came out of it. And I think, you know, one of the other things of um, in our consciousness, we're like, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, right? We less often speak of post-traumatic growth, which is a thing. It is a definite thing of like all of your wiring and nervous system gets rewritten during these things. And in my own experience, when 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 things get rewritten, there's an incredible neuroplasticity that's going on. And a lot of times they can rewire in much more efficient ways. So this is part of that post-traumatic growth where it's like, oh, the slate got wiped clean and now it's being rewired, but now with it knows where things need to go. So, oh, okay, I'm going to reorganize, right? So this is just something that I feel I like to share about because often when we're talking about trauma, it is in this context of like how horrible it is and that you're never going to be the same. And the truth is, yeah, you're never going to be the same, but it's not necessarily bad. And so there's these gifts that can come out of it. And I at least want that to hold equal weight as far as our concept of trauma and maybe our version to it, you know, like allow it to rewire us in positive ways.
Yeah, I love that so much. And also the importance of like allowing the old you to die and to have reverence for that, right? Like, so when I bring
Yeah.
people through like alchemical burning ceremonies, it's always like, hey, put some of those ashes in an urn and like grieve that, like gradually and respectfully and lovingly. Like, this is now an ancestor. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the old you. It's like the closest ancestor in your chain.
Yes.
Yeah, and well, I love that that word just arrived too, because that's where I want to go with you now. Um, So if it's okay as well, I'll share your chart in this recent eclipse happening. By the
Oh
way, I
yeah.
was just looking for where the asteroid Orpheus was when you were born.
Oh
There's a couple other I want to put on there before I go there, but let me just share. So we just had this total solar eclipse in Aries, as we know, on April 8th, 2024. So 8 years and a month later, 8 years of Venus happening. And so that would be interesting to investigate. With you being born in May of 75, you and I are actually in different Venus cycles because one was renewed in August of 75 and I'm born in October. But that's like something to pursue
yeah.
sometime. But yeah, let me just put in your chart in the screen again. Like this recent eclipse is right at the top of your chart. I mean, and I love that Venus is here at your midheaven. Astrologers often inaccurately teach that the MC, the midheaven degree, is the highest part of the chart. It's not. It's what is culminating. But what squares the ascendant is on high. And so at this time, right, like Mercury retrograde at your Chiron, the amazing proximity of this eclipse to Chiron in the sky that you're in, like Mars return. You know, it's not of the same eclipse family of that one that came around in 2016 when you met your biggest fan. But there's something here where I'm really interested because like if just generally speaking, I would imagine that's eclipse in your 10th wants to activate, especially when I look at like the so-called Lord of the 10th being Mars here in the ninth, like to activate your work as kind of like just say like the as a priest, as a that kind of, but Mars and Pisces, it's going to do this in a more kind of outward expression. I love the Mars connection to Saturn, who's in the 12th of hidden things with the sun in between them, and I could go on and on. I mean, every chart's an eternal story, right? But there's something here where we really want to activate, one of the kind of the low or high hanging fruits of the 10th house is like work. I always like to say vocation. I was taught it this way: right livelihood, which I appreciate. Like how we can make a loving,
Yeah.
not just make a living. But there's a really important word there, which is legacy, and like how we're known, how we're seen, and that changes as we change, right? Like I've like there's a thing in this house where I'm about to become a dad, right? It's like that is that as much as like an advancement in a job or a complete change in career is, obviously, right? And I
Yes.
think very importantly, like that meridian of the chart wheel, right? So we have the horizon. This is the cross we're nailed to, right? We have the horizon, which separates the below that we can't see from the above, which we can. And then we have the meridian, which separates the east, which ups from the west, which downs,
Mm.
and the place of that meridian that we can see, it's like that's the MC, right? That's the culmination. That's the fruits on the tree that we grow to kind of offer to community, if you will. But obviously, there's no fruits without roots. And the fourth, the icy, the imam chili, the bottom of the heavens, it's called, right? Like hell. Like there is no heaven without that, or there are no fruits without the roots. Like there's something about where we come from that's going to be like that soil, whether there's nutrients there or not, right? That helps us grow the tree. And so whether I work for daddy's company or run as fast as I can from that dharma as possible to go do my thing, it still has to do with those roots of youth, where we come from. And where we come from, of course, doesn't start at birth. And so this, of course, I use as a way for you to introduce us to your recent trip, which I think is very kind of a beautiful, particular expression of a longer trip that you've been on, I guess, for your whole life. But I think from the conversations we've been having these last couple of years as well. So I'm going to hide and just open my ears and hear you talk story, please.
Yeah, I think I want to speak a little bit about how I got on this journey, and it kind of started in earnest when I was a student at UNM, at University of New Mexico. I took a course called The Goddess Mythology of the Celtic People. And in that course, we were learning about the bards. And so we talked about how the bards were not only storytellers, so responsible for holding the stories of the people, but then also the lineages, the family lines. And so you would be able to go to this person and they would be able to tell you or sing you a song of your family lineage. And so we had an assignment, and the assignment was go to your oldest members of your family and ask them where you're from and your family line. So this started a lifetime journey of me being extraordinarily curious about where I come from. And so thankfully today we have these tools such as ancestry.com, which I got a membership and started plugging in names. And so it just started going back, and I began to uncover the history of my family. And so it actually more started with my dad's family. I'm on that side. I'm Pennsylvania Dutch, Mennonite, and Swiss German, and so that was more of the exploration that I was doing, because more of that information was available to me through the Mennonite Church and historical records in Pennsylvania. So I knew less about my mother's family, who were from Italy. And so what happened recently was that I was able to go to these small towns in Italy where my family is from. It's kind of really hard to describe what that was like. You know, because I had these little bits and pieces. I had just really just a name of a town and a few stories that my mom had told me. But I just decided to buy a ticket and go there. And so I just showed up. and you know, it wasn't, there was like an approach, because I had learned from some of my indigenous elder friends how to actually approach a sacred place, and to let them know that you're coming, because then, you know, this isn't just me coming, it's also creating a conversation and a relationship with those ancestors. So, you know, you sing a song or make an offering and say like, hey, grandmothers, grandfathers, I'm coming, I'm on my way. And that gives them time to get ready, to tidy up the house, and you know, prepare for your arrival. So I did this by going to some of the ancient temples that were in the area. There's one of the temples over in Abruzzo. On my way to Atessa was a temple to Hercules, who we know as Hercules. And you know, at this point, it's just the foundation stones. And so I went there, and my way of having that conversation is to bring my harp and, you know, start to play. And the sounds help to open that doorway, that portal between the worlds. And so when you do start to play, it helps to shift your consciousness into a different way of listening, and a quietness in your mind. And so this is the point where your whole energetic body can become sensitive enough to hear the subtleness of what is happening in that space. All of a sudden you'll start to hear the birds differently, and your thoughts will change. And so these are the conversations that I'm having with the layers and layers and layers of deep history in this place. So once that communication starts to be opened up, there's then a way to receive the information that's coming to you, right? And so it's this conversation between the place. This is a place where my bones came from. So there's a chord that is happening, a harmonic relation between me in this body in this lifetime, the ground that sustained my family for thousands of years before I ever arrived, and that resonance through time. It literally is a sensation. You can feel it. It is very much like feeling this harp next to my body and the vibrations conducting through your bones. So, yeah, there's so many things that just started to happen. And oh great, this is a that's great. This photo here is this is actually one of the muses, and actually wanted to talk about the family tree of Orpheus. Now, what was happening was, like, this is a photo I took in Pompeii. If you're not familiar with Pompeii, how extraordinary to be able to go to the place where you're from, and not only you're standing there, but that entire town of Pompeii, when the eruption of Vesuvius happened in 79 AD, the volcanic ash covered the whole entire city. And so it has been preserved in time like a snapshot. Now, I went to an exhibit with my friend Kat McMillan here in town. This was years ago. And they had a whole bunch of stuff that they've dug out of the ashes. And they actually found, the bodies of the people, and made plaster casts of them. And it was extraordinarily powerful you're witnessing your ancestors, like, caught in their worst possible moment, right? And so it was like, heart-wrenching in this way of, me wanting to lay them to rest properly. And instead of them being like in a museum brought around the world, right? And so that it was like pretty traumatic to see that. And so I was kind of cautious about going to Pompeii, and I was just like, man, what is this going to be like? And I'm really happy to say that walking through that city was the strangest sensation of like no time had passed at all. And I just walked out of my front door, and I'm gonna go to the baths, and then I'm gonna go to the corner, restaurant and get a scoop of soup. And the whole city is preserved. So I could hear the laughter of the children running through the streets. It was like those spirits there were ecstatic to be able to share their life experience. That was what I felt there. So
have you seen, I'm going to just interrupt the flow for a minute, because folks who are witnessing this at Instagram, the video is about to end. They'll only let us do an hour there. And for David and I, sentences are an hour. So you can head over to one of the other places. I pinned a comment. Basically, just go to my bio and you'll get a link to my YouTube page. So please join us there now or in the future so you can see the rest of this amazing thing. Yeah, I want to just kind of check in before we move forward. But let me ask this. Have you seen Floyd's live in Pompeii?
Yes. And so they had just recently had the 50th anniversary of that. So
wow.
In the amphitheater, in the tunnels under the seating, they had a whole exhibit, with looping videos of them playing there and whatnot. Wow. So
they also I think they start with echoes, which sounds appropriate to this conversation. But I can't, is it in that song or another song where there's a whole cut you into pieces line, which feels a little appropriate to where we were before. All right, so folks at Instagram, please come over to YouTube and watch the rest of this thing with us. And anyone that is here, before you do, give the video a like, share a little comment. It's really nice to see what's happening over YouTube. Like, a lot of you are participating. It's really sweet to see family there, stars of our constellations. Julie, I see you there, and I got to thank you because we just received a care package from New Zealand for the baby who's on the way, and Koa can't wait to read this book that you sent daily to his sister when she arrives. Thank you for that. All right, yeah, David, let me just actually, if you would, could you like maybe play another bit of a song, maybe play a bit of Pompeii, and that'll transition us over to this other space.
Well, I actually did play in the amphitheater at Pompeii, and I'll be sharing that on my Patreon. We'll put links in there in the comments and whatnot. But yeah.
Yum. I'm going to reflect upon a couple things that you've said along the way. One that really landed was how in that time of crisis, your body told you what to do.
Yes.
And I think that kind of importance of us learning to hear the language of the body, and the things that have to be done to kind of get out the mind out of the way so we can hear the body mind and the training that's necessary. And it's the other thing that I wanted to reflect upon is how, you received the technology, which is the wrong word for it, but the way, right, to approach sacred space, to
Absolutely.
Introduce ourselves to the ancient ones, to the buried ones, whether we're going to a land of our own ancestors or another land. I mean, those of us who have had the great fortune to have been instructed by teachers of indigenous traditions, it's very uncommon or maybe impossible to find a tradition that doesn't teach about connecting to the ancestors. And, always eventually for me, it's like, now who are your ancestors? Right? Like these are the songs we sing to the ancestors of this land in Hawaii or this land in Peru, right? Like, who are your people? Right.
Yes.
And for so many of us here, it's like, whoa, I don't know. Or I can trace it back to dad's dad, or, I met a great grandparent, or, I'm fortunate that I have an uncle who's done some of the research because I've resisted sending in my, DNA to Dick Cheney and the team to create my robot replacement or however that works. But although I'm fascinated by it and probably should just go there, but I think going there is so important, going to the land and like listening to the land, and maybe you get the clue of where you go next. And also like we can travel without moving. We certainly can connect to our thread without moving. And there's something about getting the brain mind out, like especially when you lack the information and even when you have it, to put that thing aside and open the mind of the heart, which knows all memory, right? The waterway, and just listen. And music, song, as you said, right? It's just like, it's like Orpheus, right? So like descending into Hades, into this hidden realm, right? And playing the harp, like not only is the announcement I'm coming, but maybe to keep some of the shades at bay so the journey can be true. I really just heard that myth that in your own as you were sharing that beautiful tale.
So yes, and this is part of what I've been coming to understand, in this long journey with this instrument in particular, my own lineage as far as the stories and traditions that are attached with it, and taking it, going on a deeper level with it, right? So some of the things that I've been learning recently about it have just utterly been blowing my mind. And I think often what happens is we get the condensed, like, Cliff Notes version of these ancient stories. And so what the invitation is to dig deeper, like go find the source, the oldest sources of these stories you possibly can, right? What are these stories? Well, this is an ancient technology to condense wisdom into a zip file and then pass it down through the generations, right? So that now, thousands of years later, right, I'm able to unpack it and understand and gain the wisdom of what was originally condensed into it, right? And so what are those things? Okay, what am I finding in that deep? So men Mnemosyne. This is it's the same root of mnemonic device, right? Mnemosyne.
Which is memory, yes.
So she is the mother of the 9 muses. She is the goddess of memory. And so now you have the 9 muses, right? And I can't rattle them all off, but I'm just going to go with, I'm following one lineage here. Calliope, who is the eldest and often spoken of as the chief of the muses. Well, she is the muse of epic poetry, right? So Apollo, who drives the chariot of the sun through the sky, as we referenced a little bit before, there's this whole story of how he acquires the lyre from Hermes. And so Apollo becomes the harper, the player of the lyre, who keeps all of the planetary motions in their order by playing the lyre, right? So Apollo and Calliope have a son named Orpheus. Now Orpheus becomes, he is this poet that plays the lyre. There's a whole series of Orphic hymns that are to each of the gods and goddesses, right? Now, recently what I learned, there was a Orphic cult that there were followers of Orpheus. Now, this is one of those mystery cults. So, what makes a mystery cult? Well, it's mysterious. It's a mystery. So there's only so much we know about it. But so one of the things that I learned when you would die in the classical Greek world, you would go into the underworld, Tartarus, and you would drink from the river of forgetfulness so that your memory was wiped clean, and then when you were reborn, you would have no memory of your past lives. Well, in some occasions, Orpheus would hand you a secret password, and then you would go drink from the well of memory, from his grandmother's well. And so then you would come back into life again with the memory of your past lives. Right? So these are the stories. So, okay. Now we're going to come to this day and age. I'm now Dave Hoover, storyteller. What does this unpack for me right now in my life, in this lifetime? Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. What are the characters in this whole family tree? We have memory. And how do we remember? The muses, in particular, the harp married with epic poetry. And what does it do? It helps you remember your past lives. This is the circuitry that helps you connect with your ancestral memory.
Mm.
So when you learn the old stories, you put them to music so that it stores it in all of these different parts of your brain, so that now I can remember a week-long story just in memory, not having to look at a page or something. And so, you know, we're we're kind of taught to think that myths are like fake. Like, it's even the word is like, oh, that's a myth, right? It's a lie. It is so opposite of a lie. These myths are, they are containers to preserve wisdom through generations. So if you start to unpack them, like I was saying, look at every tiny little detail. Who's related to who? What actually happened? What time of year was it when this thing happened in this story? And I know you know this very well, because that's going to tell you what stars are up above, because all of these stories are in the stars. And by observing, you'll see them.
Which brings me to this muse, who is Urania, the muse of astronomy, right? This particular sculpture above one of the triptych, one of the three doors that bring you into the Jefferson building of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., which is one of the most amazing spaces. And I wanted to share this as well, David. It's kind of hard to do this tech in this place, but I think we can. Okay. So this is your birth moment.
Wow.
In Stellarium astronomy software. I'm going to bring in the meridian here. So this is your midheaven, right? And so just to honor like how close Jupiter is to his culmination. Mercury here, so close to the Pleiades. It will be great reminder beings for you to connect to that thread. But there's another being I can't put on this screen, but I can show in another one, where astro.com just helped me find something I think you'll find fascinating, and that's Orpheus on your chart. So he's quite close to Mercury there.
Wow.
At 26 Taurus. And there's other ones here just so you can explore, and you and I can go do this solo another time. Or in constellations. But Apollo, the asteroid Apollo, is pretty close to the midheaven when you were born. That's right there at the first degree of Aries, right on the world point, the east point. Kind of close to your moon there at 17 Aquarius. That's Calliope, which is an asteroid as well. And then down right on your Neptune is Eurydice.
Wow.
Who, of course, Orpheus descends. But I wanted to show you one more thing that I found while playing to the songs of your story. So let me go back to this space over here real quick. I'm very interested in seeing, how Orpheus's harp or Apollo's harp or Hermes' harp in the heavens connects to you personally. So this is Vega. This is like the star that you and I met through.
Right.
This kind of mauve curve shows the path of Vega on the day of your birth, which of course looked more like this because the sun was in the sky. But what I want to show you, what I think I just found, is that when the sun sets, was it that or was it sunrise? Hold the phone, please. Yeah, so when the sun set on the day of your birth, Vega set as well. And this would be true the day before your birth. And there's one other thing to show in that regard before I just say a piece about it, and then we'll get back to your adventure. Is that on the day of your birth, when Jupiter rose, You're born on the 4th of May, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, on the day of your birth, when Jupiter rose, and likely mom's in labor at this point, Vega was culminating.
Oh, yeah.
Very close as she does at these latitudes to the top of the sky, to the
Wow.
zenith of the sky, right? So these are called parans these days, like when planets are coangular, and we like look for a day's worth of happening, right? So I see Vega connected to you through the Taurus sun, through the Aries Jupiter who lives in your 10th, which really like there's something in Bard, like, you know, priest is this weird word to us, right?
Yeah.
But Bard for me is not. He serves in this role. When you were talking about Minnocy and the word I can't say, the mother of the muses,
Yes.
I instantly flashed to Maria Stark, who I will also have on this space at some point.
Excellent.
This is a conversation you have to have with Maria.
Yeah.
Because she's like a daughter of that amazing goddess as well as you are, you know. But I love these connections to Vega in your chart, and they're more like mysterious connection. There's many ways for us to see connections to the so-called fixed stars besides like zodiac degrees, and that they're connected into this Taurus sun, which really, you know, I think speaks in so many ways about finding through the blinding light the intelligence of body, mind, and like deep memory that resides there. You know, like I'm seeing like Taurus, Capricorn more and more in like whale and elephant. And, you know, it's just like this kind of like big memory, you know. But also, as you shared before, like learning like the sacred songs that bring us into this place, that bring us back to the mystery, the history mystery, you know, that bring us back into like these mystery schools. And like this can happen for us like through finding our way to schools and teachers on earth, but it can also happen, and it really only happens through us finding inner teacher, you know. And so these technologies, like you mentioned, like connecting the harp and the epic poems, right, the stars, which tells stories through song as well, and probably tuning into each of these muses is a route in. And I love that you've kind of discovering this like it's part of your code, you know. And that, I mean, it's just another reason why I love that our stars are in constellation. And you know, I was hoping, and sorry to like kind of sidetrack, but it's really not. Like we after a kind of a great rest between notes in the eternal conversation that you and I are having, one of those notes came together. We made sound, and you were just with the butterflies. A little south of here in California, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to like kind of fly into that zone with you a little bit, and if you could talk about like the generations of the monarch and which one you discovered yourself to be. And that was before this trip you took back to this land of your ancestry, which feels so resonant.
I mean, so this was it was kind of a precursor to this whole journey. And you know, I have a lot of difficulty being in the Northwest, in the Pacific Northwest during the winter when there is no sun and it gets dark at 4:30, and Raven hasn't gotten the sun out of the box yet. And so I was traveling down the coast of California, and I was staying around Pismo Beach, and I went up over the sand dune to catch the sunset and bring my harp out there. And you know, I shoot videos out in nature, and it's like I said, how this is my way of connecting with the land and what's happening around me. And I crested over the hill, and as I looked up, there's this eucalyptus tree, and it is covered in thousands of monarch butterflies. And I could not believe my eyes. And it was one of those moments, like there's a lot of the old stories that talk about when the mortal will like come upon the goddesses bathing in the pool and in nature. And it was one of those moments where I just froze and was like, I cannot even believe I'm witnessing this. And so just clouds of monarch butterflies all around and hanging from the tree like butterfly icicles. So I slowly sat and set up my harp and my cameras and began to play while like doing my best not to disturb anything. And so it happened, and I played there for maybe a couple hours and witnessed that cloud of butterflies and how special that was. Well, so I then go back to my van after that, and I'm like, let me learn about butterflies. So I look up a documentary, and there unfolds this whole story of the monarch butterflies that I was unaware of. And so, you know, the orange monarch butterfly that we all know and love, they start out, there's two populations actually. There's one west of the Rocky Mountains, which is the ones that I was being with, and there's ones east of the Rocky Mountains. So this documentary was about the ones east. Now they start out in southern Mexico, and they're born there, and they begin a migration, and they go up through Mexico, and this generation makes it so far. They lay eggs. The next generation of monarchs are born. They become caterpillars, and they eat the milkweed, and they turn into a chrysalis, and they become butterflies, and they continue the migration this far, and then the cycle happens again, and then one more time. Now on the fourth generation, those butterflies are born as far as Canada, north of the Great Lakes. Now in that fourth generation, those butterflies are these super butterflies, and they are born stronger, they're bigger, they have bigger wings, and they fly all the way from Canada back to Mexico in one lifetime. Now I'm thinking, how do they do that? How do they do that? How do they know? How do they know where to go? They've never been there. They haven't been there for 4 lifetimes. So I'm thinking, well, it's inside of them, you know? Now, the other thing I like to do when I'm traveling, I look up the history and sacred places and the stories of the people that are indigenous to that place where I am. So this this led me to the I'm not quite remembering which indigenous tribe this was, the name of them. Um, but this is the people in the Great Basin. Now, all the way from Vegas down into coastal California. And they have this series of what they call salt songs. And the salt songs are these stories. It is a song cycle of the story of two sisters. And each of these songs are associated with a place on this migratory route that the people would go on. And encoded into those songs is the foods, the animals, how you would survive in each one of those places. So this is a way that indigenous people on the entire planet would encode this information of survival into a song form, right? Which is able to be stored in multiple parts in your brain at the same time. Language, music, and movement, because you're dancing also. So it's a multimodal. So you can recall it. And the information passes through time, through generations. So I'm simultaneously learning about those salt songs. And it occurs to me that, you know, I think that these butterfly have songs. And that's how they that's how the technology works. And whether or not they do, that is how people do it. That is how we have learned throughout time and space how to transmit that survival knowledge. Now, there's an excellent book, Sand Talk. Tyson Yunkamporta. He's an Aboriginal Australian. And it is such a profound book. I really encourage everyone. I love the audiobook version because it's him in his own voice telling the stories. And he speaks of how the song lines are very much that you will be going through the landscape and the stories are associated with the mountains, with that particular rock. And the songs help you to remember how to move. It's not only a map, it tells you what to eat, how to survive. It tells you the animals of the place. It tells you where all the sacred mountains and rivers and streams are. And it is a living connection to the ancestors. Now, he describes it like you go into that sacred place and then you sing the songs, you perform the rituals in this time and space, and you are laying down a fresh coat of paint on top of all of those layers that came before you. And so what happens, like that harmony between all of the times and all of the worlds opens that doorway up, and the communication, the information can come through. So this is part of that technology. It having learned this. I feel like I've been very fortunate in my life to have worked with some really incredible elders. I'm so grateful for my teachers that I've had, and it helped me understand, you know, a little bit of how we were talking before of, you know, I had some Lakota elders that I learned so much from when I was 19. And part of what I understood was like, this isn't about me becoming Lakota. This is about me understanding how to be me. and like, you know, if I'm not communicating and honoring my own traditions, then who's going to? Like, I'm the only one that can do that. I need them as much as they need me to remember them and to bring those traditions through and to put that fresh coat of paint on my own sacred places and lay down my prayers at the temples where I come from. I think you're muted.
Sometimes it's just hard to express in words. Yeah, I mean, we need them, they need us, you know, that connection. And sometimes it's like, it's particularly tricky with like, you know, ancestors that are close, like parents of parents, you know,
Yes.
looking at people who on earth you might have like a bad taste in your mouth about, right? But it's really important to remember that like it's part of the story arc and like where souls are on the other side of this strange play, right? It's not necessarily the same character that they expressed while dancing here, you know, and there's something about kind of cleaning up ourselves for our lineage, right? And for those that come after us too, but that this happens by being part of the arc, by being that butterfly. So David, I just, there's so much more here. We need to do this more. I would love for you to just let people know who are listening here, like where they can find you, how they can kind of support you and connect to your medicine further.
Yeah, we'll add some links, and you can find me. I have a Patreon, and I understand now that Patreon allows for people to join in without having to make a monetary offering, which I think is great, because I want to share these stories. I'm a storyteller, right? So the circuitry only happens if people are listening. Okay. And so the listener is equally as important as the storyteller.
Yeah, there's no sound without ears. It's only noise. It's so important, right? It's amazing too. Like, you know, this as a storyteller, like you can tell the same story, but when it's being heard by different ears, it just comes through in a different way because we tell it together.
Yes.
David's part of
all the places, you know, Instagram, Facebook.
So I'll get some links up in the video description when people come back here. I'm going to put a link in the comments right now to the School of Astrology's new constellations community, which is a place to like align stars like this in constellations as they do in the sky. And, you know, it's so beautiful too, is like, you see that constellation and that, and then they connect the whole heavens, right? So constellations is a place where we have like these different circles, and one of them is going to be like kind of a deep music circle, and I'm really excited for David to be there and kind of guiding us. And so for those of you, I see many names here currently participating with this, like you're already in the constellation space. I'm stoked about that. Folks, you can join now still for the maiden voyage price at $16 a month or $160 for the year. There's amazing things happening, astro embodiment teachings by Alyssa Luna, who I'll have on here sometime soon. There's going to be astro tarot and art spaces led by a friend of David and mine, I believe, like chart reading circles and chart reading exchange places. So if you're kind of new to practicing in the craft, you can get some experience, which is so, just invalid. I'm teaching a class every month, but it's happening at the school. And it's one of the first places at the School for Astrology too, where like, I'm not going to be running the whole thing, which I'm very excited about. And I'm really excited to just bring in wisdom carriers and storytellers like David. So I'm so stoked to hear this, Dave. I can't wait to hear more and more and more. But I got to run off to a birthing class, and I feel like I mean, this conversation has like inspired a reminder in me about how to be at my daughter's birth that's coming soon. And I will be how I am, which I imagine is in part freaking out, but hopefully just like can be that tree and be in a centered space. And really like I was just wondering the other day, like who my father's father is. And so I'm also inspired by this conversation to like follow through on that and make a couple phone calls and like find out.
Find out what you can. Something I wanted to share was like when I went to a small town, a commune, they call them there. They're these little hilltop medieval villages, right? The only reason why I knew to go to this place was because my mother did not know where her mother's family was from. Mm-hmm. I found one single slip of paper on ancestry.com. And this was a World War I draft card that my great grandfather had to fill out. And it had hometown, Casalvolino. The only place I've ever found that word. Now, I went to that town on that tiniest little sliver of barely a trail. And I showed up there and I used Google Translate. I went to the municipal building and I'm using Google Translate. And I'm like, my great grandfather comes from here. I need to find his birth certificate. And a few minutes later, she comes out and she's like, yeah, we found him. Wow. And like, I cried, and so I just wanted to share that because it's not like I was going there with like, I know exactly what is up. I know all of my ancestors. I know the whole story. I had one slip of paper that I found a digital copy on ancestry.com. That was it. And so through that, it has opened the doorway for that. Now the ancestral memory comes pouring in because I'm in the place where I'm from. And so it's a different conversation that comes through the bird song, the flavors of the food, the sound of like the water buffalo bells on their necks. And like, so I just wanted to say that of like, don't get discouraged because you only have a name or a region or something, right? Like, I think it's just like, if you make the effort, those ancestors on the other side are so eager to be remembered and honored. And if you make that effort, they're like, thank you thank you for remembering us. Like how
Yes.
and
Yeah,
so
and they'll help. They'll help that
they will.
lady find that paper, which will help
Yeah,
you connect.
yeah,
Yes. All right.
yes.
Well, I'm gonna have you back on here. We'll definitely do this in the constellation space as well to kind of
Awesome.
hear some tales about some of these beautiful paintings you found your way to along your journey. I just want to share this with you.
Yeah.
2 days ago, the asteroid Orpheus crossed your midheaven.
Wow. Yeah.
That I guess it's not entirely trivial as it happens every 2 years. It's one of the Apollyon
Oh wow.
asteroids I
Okay.
just learned, which
Right.
are asteroids that actually like get beyond Mars, but then cross between Earth and Venus too. So truly
Wow.
like Orpheus, right? Or like Mercury, right? Which I
Wow.
feel in the same lineage, right? Like it is
Yeah.
Hermes who created this beautiful instrument where we were
Yeah.
first able to hear harmony played with one hand.
Wow. Yeah.
That like they're world bridgers, you know?
Yes.
So I was hoping maybe I don't. If I could name the song, I would name it the song of the butterfly. But
Yeah.
whatever it is for you, David, if you could maybe just play something to this
That's
beautiful
great.
image on our screen to take us out here. And before I say that, hey, thank you so much for being here, friends. If you want to join in on the Constellation Zone, check out GeminiBrett.com/constellations. I'm going to find these mysterious links from David, and I will put them in the description here at YouTube so you can follow his work and support him. I've tagged him in the places where I could, and
Great.
anyway, he'll be around a lot more too. And David, my heart smiles every time I hear your song, so I'm excited to
Thanks.
reconnect in this way.
I just always appreciate sharing time and story with you, and it's I always learn so much just through our conversations, and appreciate that we're on these parallel paths, and so thank you for inviting me in, and looking forward to the next time too.
Yes.
And
Thank you, brother.
this painting, this fresco, I took that photo in Pompeii, and the whole entire room was painted, and this was the detail of Apollo playing the lyre there. So I just wanted to share where that came from.
I'm reminded to just share that Dave and I also love tripping on the physics of resonance and sound and harmony and creating experiments around this. And I have found a wonderful stargazing technology that opens up powerful portals of time travel. And one of the ways that we can do this musically is through temperaments and tuning. And so it's a very different and a long and somewhat technical conversation, but there's also a wonderful harp player in constellations, Cheryl Fulton, who's like a preeminent medieval harp player. It'd be really cool to get the two of you together to kind of
wow.
Pythagoreans and equals and all the different things
Yes.
that really help us travel through time on the waves of sound.
Well, yeah, I mean, music is the art of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
frequency.
yeah, so I mean that's that. Let that be the intro to our next class.
This is only the beginning of the end of the beginning again. But for now, it must be the end of this beginning. Thank you so much for being here with us, friends. I would really appreciate it if you would give the video a like. It just kind of helps fuel the ship and always is so appreciated. So I invite you to do this, to subscribe to the channel and all those things. And again, I will share links quite soon about where you can find David in his spaces, and you will find him very soon. I'm not sure how, but I know it will be in constellations. So check out geminibrett.com/constellations if you want to learn more about that group and join us. We have some amazing star seekers and seekers of the mysteries in general there, because it is important, again, for us to like not stay on the hermit phase forever, but to connect in, to align our stars and constellations. That's the whole idea of it. It's off to a wonderful start, and I'm so excited to see where it goes. And I don't know, because I'm only one note of that song. So thanks for being a star here with us today, and hope to see you soon in space and hopefully on Earth. Thank you, brother. Hope to see you soon. Be able to give you a big hug too.
Yes, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. See you out there.
All right, yeah. Bye-bye.